All right, let's get to the news, shall we? So we've got a busy show for you on this Tuesday. Let's talk about the mandate battle. Well, the Biden administration is once again pushing for COVID mandates on the population, while at the same time pushing for annual vaccines for COVID-19. We'll get there in a second. First, on the masking front, though, I'm going to show you in a minute just how mask mandates are likely coming back, thanks to some legal loopholes that has some lawyers pretty nervous about it that could actually bring mask mandates back. But remember when this happened? Watch.
April 18th, the Biden administration announced that the Transportation Security Administration will no longer enforce the federal mandate requiring masks in all U.S. airports and onboard aircraft.
Yeah, we were on the air that day when that happened, right? Everyone, finally, and everyone's clapping about it, removing their masks. Yeah, that was April. It's hard to believe. That was April of 2022. Hard to believe less than a year ago. A federal judge in Florida ruled that the CDC had overstepped its authority by requiring airlines to mandate masks on domestic flights. Just about every company then across the United States immediately moved to make masks optional in the workplace. You want to do it? Go ahead. You can do it. And we saw that at businesses. We see that at, fast food places and pharmacies and other people. It was their decision then. You want to do it? You do it. It's your body. You can do what you want. Many of these airlines even allowed passengers in flight during that day to remove the masks, and they had mass celebrations about it. Like this singing flight attendant who was carrying around a bag, letting people dump their masks in it while singing. Watch. You think they're happy?
Yeah. I mean, imagine their life was so miserable making people wear masks that did not want to. I feel so sorry for them. Whether or not, there are so many people who were posting online, like, I'm offended by this because I want to still wear a mask and be safe. Which, you're free to feel that way. But it completely lacks empathy for what they went through.
Well, there was people that day. We were covering that day on the show. Remember, David? Like, it was like, oh, wait a second. So now you get to ruin my life because you're not going to wear a mask. So maybe you don't understand how this all works.
Yeah.
Me wearing a mask has nothing to do with you, right?
Well, and during that whole thing, too, they understand they still had to wear their masks no matter what, the flight attendants.
Yes.
Right.
They couldn't take them off for any reason.
So the Biden administration is now fighting this. We knew that they fought it from the very beginning, and now they, of course, are facing the appeals process that unfolded today in a court of appeals. They want masks back on your faces. And after the Florida ruling, the Justice Department went nuclear. They were pissed. A number of Biden administration officials were like, that was wrong. They should not have done that. We're going to take this further. Merrick Garland's Justice Department went after them. So they filed an appeal to overturn that ruling. And today was the day. Today is the day. The Biden administration today is in court pushing for a return of mask mandates, COVID mask mandates. We don't know how this appeal will go, but it's clear that the DOJ wants to accomplish this, what they want to accomplish. They are worried that the CDC, here's the thing, right? In the future, they're worried that the CDC won't be able to impose mandates or lockdowns or any other draconian measures. So they don't necessarily care about the masks so much as right now, as it's a precedent for what they won't be able to accomplish in the future if this judge has now struck down this decision. Right. So now the oral arguments from Merrick Garland's DOJ happening now. Here's what they think about it. Here's what we know they think about it. I'm quoting. Here's from the DOJ. You can imagine the next pandemic. There was an outbreak of measles or SARS, and the CDC would want and need to take swift action in order to control such a pandemic in the future. This is the attorney for the Justice Department said. I think the important thing here is that the potential collateral estoppel effect of the district court's ruling could tie up future CDC actions. So again, it's not about this action. It's about future actions. And that's where the legal problem could arise. Of course, this is insanity. As Zero Hedge points out today, it's extremely concerning that the Justice Department apparently believes that masks on planes would be able to control such a pandemic in the first place, especially measles, which is one of the arguments they're using. It's equally concerning, they say, that the CDC is competent enough to control such a pandemic.
Right.
Right? I mean,
given their grade on the last one,
right,
would not be a passing grade.
Such a great track record. So we need to make sure that they have these things in place to control the next pandemic because you did such a great job the last time.
I guess they all should have just consulted the Amish.
Yeah, that would have been a better job, right? It went through their community and no one died, and they went to church. They shared wine out of the same glass at church, and people got sick. They cared for the elderly. They were all together, and it moved through their population, and they're fine. They utterly failed to control this one with masks as well, and on public transportation specifically, on top of their recommendations that politicians enact some of the most draconian restrictions on normal life ever enacted in the United States. But their lockdowns, their masking, their vaccine passports, and all of the other crap, all of their other recommended policies were entirely unable to prevent the spread of a highly respiratory virus.
And can we credit masks for holding back COVID? Meaning,
it could have run its course were it not for masks.
Well, I see that you have some data here to show us that since mask mandates ended, we have not had a surge in infections.
Right. However, if you look at this chart, if you think about it, first, look at that chart. Look at that big spike. That's during mask mandates.
Very well.
So look at that big spike. Think about this for a second. Keep this up here. In the nearly 9 months since the policy ended, cases in the United States have remained low. The winter of 2021 to 2022 saw a massive surge of infections with the mandate in place. No such surge materialized through the end of 2022. Look at it down.
Although you can see that initial peak that's just after mask mandates ended, the media used to say, oh, we'll see, we got rid of masks and it's coming back. But then it just, made another dip. So that didn't hold water.
So thankfully, a lawyer defending the end of the mandates have pointed out the obvious, that this has nothing to do at all with public health. He explained that the appeal's timing shows how little connection it actually bears to America's health and the overall well-being of the population. In fact, he says, quote, "This appeal is not about an urgent matter of public health. If the mask order had been such an urgent matter of public health, you would have expected the CDC to have applied for a stay to the district court's ruling," said the attorney representing the Health Freedom Defense Fund.
Yes, good point.
Right? You would have asked for a stay. You didn't. Instead, you're just like playing this out politically.
No, they're just saying, please reserve this power to have done this, even though, there's nothing there that shows that you did a good job with this power.
Yeah. I think more telling, though, and where the lawyers are actually getting nervous, and this is where I'm getting nervous, because when you have really smart lawyers who are saying, here's the troubling problem with all of this and why the government will likely win this appeal. Here's why. The U.S. Justice Department is going to argue to bring back the masks and mandate abilities. Lawyer Janine Jonas has a great thread on Twitter, shows us exactly. We've been actually inviting her to come on the show. Janine says, yesterday, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals heard arguments in the federal mask mandate case. If you care about this issue, I urge you to read the following from my older and wiser legal colleague who almost always predicts accurately. It contains some good and bad news. So the sort of the summing up of this is the court is likely going to find that the mandate was issued in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act because notice and comment was not followed. Probably the court will not touch the larger question whether the CDC has the authority to touch such a mandate or issue such a mandate. That will allow the court to prevent reissuance of a mandate at a time it's bound to be extremely unpopular, while not preventing future presidents from imposing similar mandates in the future. It will also prevent the case from reaching the Supreme Court, since SCOTUS will almost certainly not grant certification to hear a notice and comment case. If my colleague is right, the good news is that this means it's highly unlikely the federal mask mandate will return imminently. But then the larger point is that it could come back not on this particular case.
But it will leave the door open for future mandates.
Exactly. So the bad news is that such a decision won't prevent a future mask mandate on public transit in an emergency, at least until a higher court explicitly rejects the president's authority to use CDC to mandate masks on transit. So they don't want to resolve scientific cases and debates, no matter how obvious it is to me and the most of my colleagues and followers that masks do not mitigate the spread of respiratory viruses, so long as the CDC keeps putting out garbage studies saying that they do. So in the end, this is about future ability of the CDC and presidents of the United States to issue draconian things. And we already know, we're already hearing from Pfizer, already hearing from other members of the government that, oh, it's coming. Like we already know that the next step in COVID or the next pandemic is already coming. So we're already putting in place measures at the World Health Organization level to supersede governments anyway to do it whether you want to or not.
It's slightly chilling, though, that the Justice Department is using measles as an example.
Right.
I hope that that's not clairvoyant. And in which case, the mask would be less important as what, right? Would prevent measles, entire body condoms or something?
I don't know. It's so crazy, though. Why are they fighting for this? Are they just embarrassed and they're pushing for this? Or they really are doing this as like a statement to say any future CDC or later if this president wants to push for more
well,
lockdowns?
What government is going to allow a court to tell them that they'd had an inappropriate power grab? They have to maintain face in order to continue to justify that power grab.
Right. And this is a Florida judge after all, but we'll see. So we'll be watching these oral arguments, but there's something else big that's happening this week on the COVID vaccine front. The FDA is getting ready to push annual COVID vaccines. Just like the flu, here's how NPR put the story. The FDA considers a major shift in the nation's COVID vaccine strategy. So this is all happening on Thursday at their big meeting. The Food and Drug Administration is considering a major shift in the nation's COVID-19 vaccine strategy, they say. They say the goal is to simplify vaccination against COVID and perhaps adopt an approach similar to what's used for the flu vaccine, with annual updates to match whatever strain of the virus is circulating. This is according to a federal official who spoke under the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. Well, we don't need NPR and your lack of named sources. The CEO of Pfizer told us this was going to happen. This is Albert Bourla. He said this was going to happen. It was going to act just like the flu shot, and they're going to make billions of dollars off of it. He already told us this. You don't need your anonymous sources, NPR. Watch.
Because the virus is spread all over the world, that we will continue seeing new variants that are coming out, and also we will have vaccines that they will last at least a year. And I think the most likely scenario is annual revaccinations, but we don't know really. We need to wait and see the data.
Oh, yeah, we need to know.
Well,
Annual vaccines.
If we look at the data for the current booster that's on the market that was released around late October, early November, right? Had BA4, BA5. It was a bivalent booster and was effective for maybe 2.5 months. And now we have XBB.
Well, no, that's what they told us.
1.5. Right. But we're looking at now, because the way that they formulate the flu shot is by an algorithm of what strains of the flu will be popular in the upcoming flu season. They don't really know. They just kind of have an idea based on where the winter has rolled throughout the globe.
Right.
And they surmise which 9 or 10 strains to put in the flu vaccine, and then hope that they've guessed right, that those are the ones that we, the public, are exposed to. But they never completely know. And so we see now how they're doing this with the COVID vaccine. They surmised that BA4, BA5 would be popular, which it was before the COVID vaccine, the bivalent booster was rolled out. And then it only really overlapped that wave by maybe 6 weeks, because now we're on to XBB 0.1.5. And so you have a 2-month window to have been inoculized for what is actually out there at the rate that COVID is mutating.
This is the brilliance of this virus, right? That it's going to mutate so much that we can just continue every year to provide you with a solution with a new vaccine and make billions of dollars off of it. It's almost as if it was, created this way.
Yeah,
and they were also talking about how you'd have to take is it Plovaxit or whatever the other pill that they came out with, that you take that daily is probably the plan. That's a daily pill, and then an annual booster to go with that pill.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah, just load them up. So every morning with your vitamins, your Flintstone vitamins, just load them up.
Okay.
Yep.
Do people still eat Flintstone vitamins?
I don't know. I haven't seen them in years.
I mean, that's what they should do. Just convert the Flintstone vitamins into like the Pfizer vitamins.
Yeah. Remember
Purple.
the jingle?
Maybe they already have.
10 million strong and growing. We're Flintstone kids.
Yep.
Filled with
Do
sugar.
kids still know who the Flintstones are?
I wonder.
I don't think kids still know who the Flintstones are, do they?
I actually bought the season pass of like the first season of it just to show my kids like a few years ago. I put it on like in the morning while they were, having breakfast, and they're like, "What is this, Daddy? What is this? What is this ancient show?" Meanwhile, they're trying to rewrite history on this whole thing. So this is amazing because the FDA Vaccine Advisory Committee member, Dr. Paul Offit, who is out there pushing vaccine mandates and vaccines for all age groups. Now, he's a FDA Vaccine Advisory Committee member, the very people that are meeting on Thursday to decide what to do and put, it's going to be interesting to see how they roll this into schools. That's the other big question, right? How they make this as part of an annual procedure for children as part of a dose. And I'm telling you, it's coming. We already know that's coming. So he's now, Paul Offit from the FDA is now walking back the CDC's, hey, get a needle in every arm, right? That was the plan, get a needle in every arm. He's now saying the opposite of what they said and what he said just a few short months ago. Watch.
I think we created this unreal expectation that this vaccine can protect against mild disease. That's not true.
You mentioned that certain groups, right? They should definitely go for this vaccine, but it was marketed and it was pushed to everyone. Why?
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think that the CDC's own data, or the UK data, or the Canadian data, or the Israeli data show that really only certain groups benefit in terms of protection against severe disease. You can't. Therefore, I think those groups should be targeted. So I'm not sure why the CDC pushed forward with this.
So basically, I was asking you about, does this information, the fact that you're saying the group 65 and older, then there's this new report that that particular group could also have a stroke once they've had that shot within a matter of so many weeks. Do you think that this is leading to vaccine hesitancy, which is something we've been fighting from the beginning?
I don't think it's creating more vaccine hesitancy. I think we already have a fairly healthy amount of vaccine hesitancy as it stands. I really wish that the CDC had really focused on those groups most likely to benefit, meaning the high risk groups, and not tried to push this booster vaccine for everybody, because people have basically rejected it. I think the uptake has only been about 15% of those who are recommended. Hopefully that 15% are the high risk groups, but I think we have vaccine hesitancy anyway. I don't think this business about whether the vaccine caused strokes in the elderly increased hesitancy. I think we're already pretty high level of hesitancy as it stands.
Yeah, you're full of crap. You're full of crap because you're upset that the CDC was pushing it for all age groups and should have really been zeroing in on just the population that needed it, just the people who were had comorbidities and were the population that was going to be hurt by this. Really? You specifically were calling for that. You were telling everyone to do that. We have the videotape in 2021 where here you are praising vaccine mandates across the board and downplaying adverse events and pushing it for all age groups. You were calling for this. Watch.
So you have an enormous safety record on which to stand, an enormous efficacy record on which to stand. I mean, even very, very rare side effects like myocardial inflammation, which occurs maybe in as frequently as 1 in 20,000 people, or clotting associated with the J&J vaccine, which is close to about 1 in 500,000 people. It's not to get a vaccine. It's not a risk-free choice. It's just a choice to take a different and more serious risk. So I think people should be have been reassured by all of the data that we had before there ever was a full approval. But now that there's a full approval, hopefully there will be some people who will feel better about getting this vaccine. And I think also importantly, there are now a number of institutions and private groups in the private sector that are now more comfortable mandating the vaccine.
Okay, it was not a full approval; it was an emergency approval.
Yeah.
Okay, but
that's what I was going to say. Like, where's the full approval?
Yeah, that's a misleading thing to say.
We'll come back to your second point, but Thomas Massey agrees with both of you here on this. Congressman Thomas Massey, he just tweeted this today on this very point, and he's like, wait a second. Did I not send this? Has anyone seen an FDA-approved, properly labeled COVID vaccine in the United States yet? If so, please post a picture of the label and post the name and location of the provider. Has anyone seen an FDA-approved, properly labeled COVID? Because it doesn't exist.
Right.
They haven't been approved. So go ahead, your second point.
Well, Paul Offit is the person who CNN has been scrubbing from their website since he told Erica Hill that he did not think everyone needed a booster in the fall. So he's been walking this back since this new bivalent booster, where he was like, wait a minute, I don't know that I signed up for this. I spoke out in favor of the first few vaccines. But he's been saying this for a long time. And the mainstream media has been, sticking its head in the sand. They probably need a chiropractor by this point for how much they're trying to not let him speak now.
Yeah. So again, but this is what the FDA is going to do. So on Thursday, they're going to do this. They're also going to change the rules around the COVID vaccines. We covered this in the newsletter a little bit this morning, allowing people to skip the original 2-shot vaccination process. So, the first 2 Pfizer shots you needed to get or Moderna shots, you don't have to do those anymore. They're just saying they're going to skip right to the boosters.
Yeah.
What? We were told, how often were we told that you need to get the whole dose, that you need to get those? You got to make sure you're fully vaccinated and boosted. Fauci told us repeatedly. The head of the CDC told us repeatedly, you've got to get your main shot and then you got to get boosted.
Right.
You can't now we're just skipping and we're just skipping to the boosters.
Just do whatever. Just take some shit.
Just put whatever you want in your body. They're making it up as they go along. But let me ask you this in the chat. Do you guys trust the CDC? Do you guys trust the people at the FDA to these are the same people that came up with the food pyramid.
Right. And I just don't understand what difference this will make, because who is the person? I would love to interview that person. Who's the person who's like, I didn't get the original COVID vaccine. I didn't like the idea of that, but sure, I'll take this booster. I'll go straight to it now that I don't have to take the first 2. I don't understand that archetype of someone who's going to jump straight to a booster, given all the opportunities they had for the original COVID vaccine and doesn't want to.
Maybe they're hoping that the other one was way too many. And now they can skip all that. They can just go
and I'll just
shortcut.
get the one.
Yeah.
I guess, but a vaccine researcher at Mayo Clinic told NPR the public is voting with their arms, if you will. And they're saying, no, this doesn't make sense to us. So people are not rolling up their sleeves, if you will.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.